Hi, Mom. Yeah, so Annabelle is going to be graduating from high school soon, but she might not walk because she said it's not a big deal that anybody can graduate from high school. But
Well, this is August, so she's not technically going to graduate till June of next year, but I think she has pretty much all the credit she needs even now. But she made the comment that, no, I don't know if I'll walk and wear a cap and gown. Anybody can graduate high school. I'll save that for college.
ah,
And so I told her that maybe anybody can graduate, but it's still a milestone. I mean, anybody can learn to walk, anybody can go to kindergarten, anybody can do lots of things, but still, when it's you, it's a milestone. And then you and I were mentioning that Grandpa, my dad, didn't get to graduate high school and would have, treasured that, but had to quit school at 8th grade and help support himself as well as the family, because let's see, 8th grade, say 13 years old, that would have been the early 30s, and you only had food if you worked that day, basically. So graduating high school was, I'm sure, a big deal to him. And our family always celebrated all graduations. But I was going to tell you that I remember Uncle Craig. He graduated in, I think, 77, 76 or 7. And I asked him, so are we going to have a party? And he said, anybody can graduate high school. No, I don't want a party. And I don't remember if his mom had a party or not, but I told him that, this is a milestone. And
do you know if his dad, Grandpa Peterson, graduated from high school?
hey, Dwayne, did your dad graduate from high school?
Yes.
Yes,
He was a salutatorian in his class,
he was a salutatorian.
which is number 2 in his class.
Number 2 in his class.
So
There
he
were
was.
only- There were only 2 people that graduated that year.
Oh.
Really? Were there really only 2 people that graduated?
Is that the truth?
That's a true story.
So one was the valedictorian and one was a saluta.
That's what you call him.
Wait, Grandpa Peterson went to a high school of 2 people?
So yeah. So what city was that in Washington?
That was in the Olympic Peninsula in
The Olympic Peninsula of Washington. Would that have been Bremerton?
yeah, kind of near Bremerton.
It was like a village?
I'm guessing there were lots of farms.
But they just had very different growing up lives if Grandpa Clark graduated 8th grade.
Well, it sounds like Grandpa Peterson, whose dad was a nurse, had more of a stable. My grandpa was hauling his kids around, following the railroad and then following crops, so they did not have a stable childhood, and which probably explains why my dad was stable. But yeah, no, and I don't know if any of those 5 boys of Grandpa's first marriage, his wife died at 29. I don't know if any of those first 5 boys graduated high school. I just don't know.
But
My dad was the oldest, but maybe the youngest had that opportunity.
But Grandpa Marvin Clark ended up owning all these different houses over his life and was still a successful person even though he didn't have a high school degree. That's crazy.
Yep. Don't know if you could do that now. I don't know.
Right. That's just a whole nother era.
Maybe 10 years ago in the cannabis industry you could have.
Well, and Grandpa was like an orphan kind of, right?
Well, his mom died when he was 9, and the baby at the time was 1. And so his dad did what he could, but then he'd periodically have to put the boys in the orphanage, which wasn't terribly uncommon in that time. So we're talking 1928 when mom died. And
And
so
this
they
is
would
like
have to,
Kansas?
Huh?
Is this Kansas?
Kansas. He was born in Larned. And so, but then they moved. They were in Oklahoma. They were in Texas. And So they'd have to go in the orphanage from time to time while Dad followed the railroad. The grandpa followed my grandpa, followed the railroad, and then he'd fetch him up again. And one time my dad went and lived with his uncle in Oklahoma. And I specifically asked my dad once, did he hit you? Because my dad, that's how he disciplined, he hit. But he said no. And I thought, then why do you hit? And I never asked him, but I wish I would have asked him at some point, what made you choose the belt? But come to find out, a lot of people did the belt in the 40s and 50s. So,
oh man.
don't know why. But, yeah, and then my grandpa's second family, when he got married again and had 5 more kids, they followed the crops. They were definitely migrant. And I don't know if my dad actually ever was involved in following the crops.
Okay.
I know that his dad, my grandpa, followed the railroad jobs.
And then did all the sons, the kids, end up coming to California, or did some stay out there?
Okay, are you ready for this?
In just a minute.
Do you know?
Yeah, they all ended up here because Grandpa came here. And they all ended up here. None of them lived as adults in other states. Because my dad was 21 when he married my mom. So,
So your grandpa, my great grandpa, came to California.
Yep.
Eventually,
and followed the crops in the Salinas Valley and all that. You know, Dallas and Virgil, and they all have stories.
Oh, and that's why they lived in the tent. Some of the kids
Yeah,
and my
yeah.
great grandpa.
Dallas said one of their best summers was he and Virgil got to camp right by the creek. And that was just the best summer. And I mean, it sounds like a hard life to me, but they found joy in it. So, yeah, so Grandpa came to California, married Dorothy Snyder, who was a widow with 3 sons, and a daughter who eventually died in her teens. And she married my grandpa and had 5 more children, which included 2 girls. So my grandpa had 2 biological daughters and 8 biological sons. And then 3 stepsons and a stepdaughter. And they were, together for years until
How did he die?
emphysema. He died pretty young, 72, emphysema. From smoking and also from just his biological makeup, because he had it really bad. He was on oxygen in his 60s already. So he had it worse than the average person that smokes. So I don't know. So he died young. But he had most of his hair. He had a big head of hair, tall, gaunt, and of his 8 sons, Virgil and my dad were the tallest. And they were over 6 feet. And the rest were not, although Dallas was pretty close.